Mary Bay Goddess is ready to give you treatment. What's up guys, Sparks back with another Goddess Victory Nikke video, and today we're doing an in-depth review and testing of Summer Mary. Also at the end of the video, I'm opening a Pilgrim mold, so look forward to see me pull Product 08 or something. Alright, so, she's a Burst 1 water support with a sniper rifle. Her first skill activates when entering full burst and affects all allies. It's one of those skills that stacks effects every time it's activated, and it recovers a small percentage of Mary's max HP every second for 5 seconds. At level 1, it's a very small 0.62%, but by the third activation, it's 4% plus 2% plus the 0.6% for about 7%, which is much more significant. And keep in mind, this is only level 1. Later on, when I did the actual testing, her skills were level 4, so we're getting even more healing. But I did this section of the screen recording early on, and so it's still at level 1 here on screen. So long story short, this is probably her best skill. With high skill levels, this can be very significant healing, and it affects everyone, not just herself or just other water units. The problem, which I will demonstrate later in the video, is that it can just be too slow. Theoretically, a huge amount of HP is great, but it doesn't matter if you're already dead. So her second skill activates when using a burst skill and affects all water allies only. This is another skill that stacks effects based on how many times it's activated. Damage to fire enemies goes up a percentage for 3 seconds. Then the second time it goes up for 5 seconds, and then the third activation goes up for 10 seconds. These are fairly small increases in damage, and 3 seconds is not much. 5 seconds is still a bit short, and by the third time, 10 seconds is kind of a lot, but again, you're not seeing these numbers until the third burst cycle. For comparison, Leader's increase in attack goes for 5 seconds, which is considered not very long, but at least she's increasing it by a massive 50 to 66% depending on skill level. Now, just because a unit is not as good as Leader is no reason to ignore them. Not everyone has the best units, and in many cases you need 3 or even 5 teams, but I want to give you some kind of frame of reference. Okay, her burst has a 20-second cooldown. Love to see it. It has 2 effects. The first increases attack of all water allies and increases attack for 3 seconds. Again, great effect, but very short time. The second effect increases all allies' HP, so this synergizes really well with her skill 1, and that works for all types of units. The burst is okay, definitely better on an all-water team, kind of below average on a mixed team. Another thing I want to point out here is that Mary isn't doing anything unless you're bursting, so not ideal. Okay, for cubes, depending on how you're using her, you actually have a few options. You're doing full auto, or if you're doing full auto, or just primarily controlling someone else, you might want to ignore using her, and then in that case you're going to give her the adjutant cube for faster charging. The wingman cube is a decent choice for max ammo, and then you can like manual her and do the quick charging. Or you could do the relic quantum cube for increased burst generation. For overload gear, I would prioritize the elemental damage because these are the matchups you actually want to be using her in anyway. That said, Mary will probably be quite far down on the list of units you want to actually overload at all. Okay, now let's take a look at shooting range tests. We're going to do all water teams because this is definitely how you want to be using her ideally. So keep in mind, the damage is going to be way lower than other teams I've shown you with people like Nihilister or Rupee, but that's not really the point. Mary is someone you want to be using in raids or against specific campaign bosses like Nihilister, and building water teams to fight fire enemies. So in this test, we're interested in how Mary helps the squad perform within water comps. So in this first one, we're bursting with Dorothy. Dorothy is one of the strongest water units in the game, and her burst is very strong against bosses. So in an ideal use case, we probably want to do our burst with Dorothy most of the time and just leave Mary to support her with skills 1 and 2. So we did about 67 million, and Mary healed for a little over 1 million. Now we'll do the same squad but burst with Mary. Let's say we want maximum healing and we can benefit from the synergy of her burst with increasing her max HP and her first skill healing even more. So surprisingly, we did significantly, or rather unsurprisingly, we did significantly less damage at 53 million. Now let's take a look at her healing. She healed for about 915,000. This is actually less than the first time. Now, this is an example of just how much RNG is involved in this game, but it's also an example of how her burst really isn't enough to reliably give a significant healing increase, and the damage increase on her burst is pretty mid. It is worth noting that Mary gets better on both offense and healing the longer a fight goes, and the shooting range test time limit is pretty short. But also remember that it doesn't matter how much time you have left if you're dead. Okay, so we'll show you a third test where again we use an all-water team, but let's say we think we just have enough healing with Helm and we don't even need Mary. So we'll do the same squad, but instead of Mary, we'll put in a decent, kind of mid-tier attacker, Brid, for additional all-out DPS. This time we did a far better 72 million damage, and I don't even have any investment in Brid aside from her being at 2 stars. To be honest, it's not looking great for Bay Mary. Now, as far as squad mates, again, I would say stick to all water as at least primarily water teams. So notable units are Dorothy, Helm, Privity, Viper, and Vesti. Hopefully Summer Neon will prove to be a strong unit, and then that will be another great option for Mary Bay Goddess teams. The thing is, if we are to consider a situation like Fire Raid bosses and making at least 3 teams, you might actually want to split Helm on one team and Mary on the other, so you have healing on both teams. Also, Dorothy and Mary, both being 20-second cooldowns, might incentivize you to put them on separate teams as well. So for general PvE use, what if you just need a healer and, for your main squad and you're not trying to go all water? A lot of people have asked me if she's worth using mainly for her skill 1 and healing anybody. The short answer is no. So here I'm attempting a hard mode campaign stage I've been stuck at for a while, but I'm leveled up a couple times since last time I tried this, so it might be possible. Now I'm using Mary as my healer on my otherwise standard go anywhere, do anything power team. Unfortunately, we failed. Now I'll attempt it again with the same squad, but using Rapunzel as a healer instead. Honestly, I didn't even think I would beat it with Rapunzel, but I did. Not only was Rapunzel healing far more effective, but when it wasn't enough, she was able to revive Modernia to get us back into the fight. Now, Rapunzel is the best healer in the game. This is just proof that Mary isn't exactly changing that. So, this doesn't necessarily mean Mary is bad because she's not as good as Rapunzel, but it shows that Mary might not cut it in a lot of situations, and I think Pepper is probably still better in most situations than Bay Goddess Mary will be. As far as general healing goes, Mary might be 3rd best healer, but Helm might even fight her for that spot. If you're wondering about Mary in PvP, just forget it. As I said before, Mary gets better and better the longer a fight goes on, and generally arena fights go very quickly, and are over after the first or maybe the second burst in some situations, and it's extremely rare for you to get to a 3rd or more burst. So, plus you're never going to be fighting an all fire team, and probably very rarely trying to build an all water team for arena either. So with all this in mind, I wouldn't recommend most players pull for Mary. However, despite the results of this review looking kind of negative, I still think Mary is a worthwhile addition to a lot of high-level accounts, because the more specialized options you have in Union Raid and Solo Raid, the better. And I expect to see more and more content that benefit elemental-specific strategies. In this context, Mary is a decent role player that you'll want to have. Okay, so if you've made it to the end of this video, you're a legend, and you can see the Pilgrim mold. I'm hoping for Isabel because she's the one Pilgrim I still don't have. Second choice would be a copy of Snow White, of course, and third would probably be Scarlet. Scarlet! Nice! I'm so relieved that wasn't an R or an SR. This is actually super dope because that takes her to max limit break. Alright, Subscribe for more Nikke videos and the best builds on the internet. I'm an official content creator and I love the game. Hope you have a great day, and I'll see you on my next stream or the next video.